And welcome everybody to this Portugal Calling webinar. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Buying a house in Portugal over the internet. Who better to speak to about that than Ana Caramujo from Savvy Cat? Good evening to you, Ana. How are you?
Good evening, Carl. I'm great. It is a very interesting topic to discuss, and also, like everyone, my condolences to the British people for the events of today.
Thank you. That's very thoughtful of you. Undoubtedly, people, as well as wanting to know how to buy a house over the internet, will need to know where you get your wallpaper from as well, because it's utterly fabulous. So we'll come back to that later on this evening, if we may. Just in case people don't know who you are, which I find hard to believe, Ana Caramujo of Savvy Cat, can you tell us a little bit about your company and what you do for people before we get into the specifics of buying a house on the internet in Portugal?
Of course. So Savvy Cat Realty is a relocation and investment agency for foreigners looking to relocate to Portugal. We support in the whole process from start to end, including visa, location advisory, finding a property, finding schools for your kids, for renovating or constructing, finding the architects, the engineers, and so on, all the legal support and the technical verifications.
Excellent. And how's it going at the moment? Busy?
Very busy.
Thought you might be. So thank you for making time for us this evening. And we always get a lot of great compliments when you join us, either in the morning or in the evening in this environment. Thomas saying people we've worked with have great experiences with Ana and Savvy Cat. So that's great to know. And do let us know where you're listening from this evening. Do say hi in the chat and, of course, ask your questions there. So this is what people do, Ana, isn't it? They hear about how great Portugal is, want to come and live here. What's the first thing you do? We've got to find a house over there, and you look on the internet. Would you recommend such a, I mean, some people see that as utterly reckless, but clearly it works. People are doing it. People in our community have done it. What's your first thought on that?
I think there are two kinds of people, so to say. There are the careful ones, the people that want to rent before buying. And I would say that renting over digitally is a lot easier and safer than buying. Not that buying is a much more complicated process. And people that want to go, then just go straight to buying, which of course you need to be very sure about what you're doing, or be willing to have that disposable income.
Okay, that's a really good way of putting it. Okay, so if it goes wrong, that's your disposable income. Okay, so let's look at how it doesn't go wrong, how we can have the best possible chances. Of course, this won't be 100% fail-safe approach, will it? Things do and can go wrong when you're buying a house at the best of times, and with the added complication of buying over the internet, there will be added perils, I suspect. So what's the first step when someone says to you, look, Ana, I just need to get over there, I need you to help me buy a house, let's crack on. What are your words of caution or otherwise to them?
I think there are two very important factors. One is always get someone that is just on your side. Get a buyer's agent. I'm not the only buyer agent in Portugal. There is more. I don't need people to work exclusively with me, but I think it is very, very, very important. And this is, again, very important. Get a buyer agent. Here in Portugal, it is legal for the selling agents to represent the buyer, and that is kind of an obvious conflict of interest. So from a selling perspective, obviously what the seller wants is to get the best money possible for their house, and it makes sense that the selling agent has a commission, so they get more money if they sell it for more. As a buyer, that's not what you want. What you want is to have a good purchase and a safe purchase, and to be good, to just move into that property and have a good life there, or put it on investments or whatever you want to do with the least problems possible. On top of that, usually the selling agencies will, of course, have their portfolios. That's their job. So they will try to sell you the property that they have, because that's their job. Doesn't mean that's the most adequate property for you. And once again, their job is to sell it to you. So they will often tell you what you want to hear and not exactly how things are. So it's very, very important, especially if you're going to buy through the internet, to get a buyer agent, someone that's on your side, and definitely have a contract with that person.
Okay.
So you establish service standards.
A couple of things there then. clearly, well, the first thing to establish, it is doable and possible. I mean, that's we've taken that for granted. It is possible to do that. You can see something on the internet and you can buy it without ever having set foot in Portugal. This is what we know, people have done this, right? But there are parts of that process that we'll have to elaborate on. And having a buyer's agent means you have somebody representing you. You mentioned there that you've got sometimes the seller's agent representing both sides, which is the conflict of interest. Why is that allowed to happen? Is there an upside to that sometimes?
Unfortunately, that is how it is predicted in the Portuguese market. And it's actually, even from a legal perspective, the law is kind of designed for selling agents, and it's not, although it is predicted on the law, the existence of buying agents, there are no actual regulations for buying agents, and the regulations on the law are very much made from a selling agent perspective. So that can be a problematic side of things. The way I came around that is that I separated the services I have from the actual transaction. So I have a contract, a service contract with my clients, specifying the kinds of services I will be giving them, from consultancy, verification, legal assistance, all of those things. And then the transaction is a separate thing, and that is exactly to make my company safe for the way the legal framework is here in Portugal. So unfortunately, I would think that the legal framework definitely needs to be updated. And I also believe that a big part of the reason for the drastic inflation over the last few years is exactly the inexistence of buying agents. They just started appearing on the Portuguese market about 5 years ago, and they are starting to become more popular now. And if there is no one representing the sellers, what happens so far is the prices rise with no ceiling and no one telling people, okay, this is not a good price.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so thank goodness that it is changing. And ladies and gentlemen, you are looking at part of the leading edge of changing real estate here in Portugal. Not me. I'm talking about Anna there, Savvy Cat. So let's take a kind of case study approach to this. Somebody would work with you or any other buyer's agent. They've got their boots on the ground. They've got their eyes on the property. Somebody who'll go and look and make sure it's a good fit. Typically, and we'll go into the legals of all that as well, because I guess buyers agents might vary from place to place and from personality to personality, but the legal side of it will be fairly straightforward, and we'll come to that. How long might that first process take in your experience? Do you do a lot of toing and froing for people?
There are two issues with buying online. One of them is the paperwork, and the other one is showing things to the client and actually getting things across. Because there is, as much as we do, video calls and video meetings and video reports and all of that, it's never exactly the same as being there. And we can try and give our clients the best idea possible. But personally, I'm always a bit worried, especially when it is for personal purchase. I do a lot more online processes for investors than I do for personal use, because I believe that for personal use, there is a very emotional factor, that it's important for the person to walk into the house and feel at home. And you can't do that, even no matter how good your buyer agent is and how good the relationship is. Sure, you can get to know one and the agent may be very confident that's that, but it's always a different thing to just do it yourself.
That's a really interesting distinction. Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you. Go on.
So from a documentation perspective, one of the big barriers that you can find when buying online is that a lot of documentation will have to be apostillated, and that is kind of a pain and an expensive thing to do. So that is a big part of the issues on the process, and it will have to be shipping back and forth. It is a lot easier if the client comes to Portugal at least once and has a power of attorney to someone to sign in their name. In the deed, the promise contract, it can be signed digitally, but the deed is the final transaction where the change of ownership takes place at the eyes of the state. In the deed, the signing has to be presential. And of course, if the client isn't there, someone has to be there for the client, and someone has to have power of attorney to do that. So that's one of the issues that can arise. And if the client hasn't been to Portugal at all, they will have to have an apostillated power of attorney giving power to the person, and that has to go through the embassies, because it has to be translated to Portuguese, and it is kind of a painful process, so to say.
Okay, I'd like to unpack that a little bit, if I may. Some people might have some experience of power of attorney in their life, but apostilling, I think, is sometimes it's the first time people have ever heard the word and about the process when they want to do something in Portugal or when they're moving to Portugal. So the technicalities, the specifics of that. Apostilling is what the legal identification of documents from a distance. Is that basically what we're talking about?
Apostillation will do two things. It will give official validation to the document, and often it will give an official validation to the translation of the document, because power of attorney, let's imagine in English from America, won't be valid in Portugal unless it's translated. So that document has to be translated, and the translation has to be valid in order for it to be valid in Portugal.
Okay, so, and who is doing this? Who is doing the verification?
It's usually, apostillations are usually done by the embassies or courts.
Oh, okay. So very interesting. And therein lies some of the complexity that can arise, for example, in this process of buying a property on the internet. I want to take you back a little bit, because it's fascinating what you said there. If it's somebody's dream home, showing them pictures and videos is only going to give them a certain amount of information, isn't it? Whereas if it's an investment and it's a little bit colder, a little bit less emotional, it'll be, won't it? And I think, would you say that for people who are buying via specification rather than emotion, the internet process might work a little better?
It will be easier, yes, because yeah, it's about numbers, it's about specifications and so on. It's a much more logical process, while it's when it's for personal use, it's a very emotional one.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so yes, do get your questions into the chat, please. The first coming through is from Jen. How long does this process take from finding to owning? That's a bit of a real estate, how long is a piece of string question, but we get the idea, Jen, and it's an important one to put to Anna. But we're only a little bit of the way through the process so far here, aren't we, in describing it? So you've sent the videos. I mean, you specifically for Savvy Cat, what level of detail do you go to? What sort of file?
I will walk you through how the service in Savvy Cat usually works. Yeah. So Savvy Cat has 3 different packages for buyers. We have the decided package that is designed for those who are already very set on a location. So they want, let's imagine, to focus in Porto, and they will be only working with the agent of Porto. And that package has an estimated length of the service of 6 months. So that's usually the expected time until purchase. It's usually between, the fastest process we had took about a month and a half. We found the property in something like 3 weeks, which was, it's not the norm at all. Like, we got lucky, it went well, we found something that the client liked, and we were able to move forward with things. But usually the process will be closer to 3 to 6 months, depending a lot on exactly how things move and how specific the requirements are and how flexible the clients are. Of course, the more flexible the clients are, the more likely it will be for us to find something faster. When clients have a very specific requirement, it can take a lot longer. So the first thing that we do is, I'm sorry, I'm reading the questions and I'm getting distracted.
I'll do that.
Let me read I'm going to minimize the chat.
I'll take care of that for you. Stop it, Hank.
Okay, so I was walking through our packages, and I was saying that we have the decided package, then we have the Wanderer package. The Wanderer package is designed for those that want to explore multiple locations and are not exactly sure where they want to go. So a big part of this package focuses on location advisory and exploring the Portuguese country. And then we have the investors package. This investors package is mostly for big investors, so renovations or full buildings or constructions of full buildings or purchases of more than 3 apartments, 3 or more apartments. So the Wanderer package will have a duration of up to 12 months and will cover construction processes and up to 2 house purchases. And the investor package has an estimated duration of 2 years and covers all of the above. And it's, of course, our biggest package. So the first thing that we usually do to our clients, we usually ask our clients to purchase our service about a month before they plan to come to Portugal. And during this month, they start working with the local agents. So I have agents throughout the whole country, Algarve, Alentejo, Lisboa, then Leiria and Caldas area, Coimbra and Aveiro area, Porto and Braga. And we usually, of course, select, even when they are wanderers and they are not sure where they want to go yet, we will select a location to start working first. Otherwise, things just get confusing. So they start the advisory process with the corresponding agent, and there will be a back and forth in research. So my agents will send things to the clients that they think are suitable and explain why they think they are suitable. The clients will give us their feedback, and the other way around happens too. So the clients can send us research and we will give them our feedback. And usually through this process, the clients are able to understand the local market, and we are able to understand the client's needs and lifestyle. And during this process, it's also where most of the location advisory take place, and we start narrowing down to neighborhoods that we think are the most suitable for the specific client. Once we have a selection of neighborhoods that we think are the best for this client to live in, we usually plan a tour, and these are resident tours. So these are tours to see things from a practical resident perspective. So how long you have to drive to go to the grocery stores, if things are in walking distance, what's the transportation like, how if you're going to drive, how the specifics are, if there's cultural activities, if there's a lot of foreigners, if it's mostly locals, if you have schools nearby, if you have specific activities that the client is looking for. So those are the kind of things that we focus on the tours. And of course, we also go over the locations from a business logical perspective. So if the prices have been rising, if they've been going down, if they have been developing, if there have been a lot of new construction, a lot of people moving in. And usually after these tours, the clients have a very good idea of what locations they felt the most comfortable in. So on the Wanderer package, we allow clients to explore as many locations as they want virtually with the agents, but then we have to narrow down to do 2 locations to do the actual tours in. So after this process, usually the clients have a clear preference and say, okay, no, I felt a home here. And they will, this is of course for personal purchases. In investment processes, it's a bit different. But for personal purchases, they usually are very sure where they want to go after this phase. And we will start focusing on that location and start visiting properties more selectively and from a moving forward perspective. And once we get to a stage where the client wants to make an offer, we will do the inspections, both legally verifying all the documentation and so on, and technical, where which engineers go to the location to verify that everything is in order. And if something is not in order, how much it will cost you to fix it. Yep. So our clients know how much they will be spending prior to actually moving forward. Fantastic. So of course, this process is not fully digitally, and we do prefer that the process is not fully digital. Yeah. If the process is fully digital, we don't have a tour and we don't have that visitation side of things, and we tend to focus more on a logical purchase. When we have investors, We will do market studies and return studies. We have our Excel spreadsheets where we will calculate the return on investment, and we will present the studies to whether or not it's likely that the apartment will evaluate and what has been the trend in the area, and also what's the rental trend, if how much they can rent it for, how long it will take to get their money back, if they're going to sell, how much they will be able to sell it for. A very popular investment model is flipping, so doing some renovations and then reselling. That can be very profitable. So we do all those kinds of studies in order to get all the information to our clients. And it is, of course, a much more logical process where it is much easier to do everything digitally.
Very good, very thorough, very well thought out. Love that. And of course, as well as asking the questions that people are putting in the chat, I'll put those forward. When we stop the recording, you can ask some of your own more personal questions that won't be immortalized on the internet afterwards. So you can do that later if you'd prefer to do that. That's excellent, Anna. We do have some questions in the chat then. We've dealt with how long it takes and obviously different time durations for different types of people and requirements there. MS says, do buyers agents charge a fee for showing properties to clients? Well, kind of. It's part of the package that's being talked about here. In the US, the agents don't charge fees to find and show properties. It is different here, MS, as I'm sure you're discovering and seeing here. And I'd like to talk some more about the peculiarities then, given that this is buying a house in Portugal over the internet. What do we need to pay special attention to then for the digital buyer, for the remote buyer, Anna, in this process?
I think it's very important, especially to hire someone that will do inspection for you and will get you a report of what the actual state of the property is. Thomas from Rehabilitation, who is here, is one of the persons who does that kind of thing too. And that is very important because one of the biggest issues with buying something that can go wrong is if the property isn't in good state. Often things will be like painted and they look fine externally, but then you have humidity problems and other sort of problems that you will need to fix. Another thing that can be problematic is location. So let's imagine you have a gorgeous apartment in a terrible area, but you have no idea because you're an expat. So it's important to have a person who will be honest with you and say, okay, there is a reason that this has an amazing price. So if you find something that is an absolutely amazing price, more often than not, there will be something wrong with it. So be careful.
If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true.
Yeah, it probably is.
This goes back to that problem, doesn't it, of having the seller's agent talking to you as the buyer. You know, this is a great bargain. Is this a nice area? Yeah. Of course it is, and that's why you need the independent buyer's agent service. Sorry, again, interrupting you, but you're in quite the flow there about the pitfalls of buying remotely over the internet, of course.
Yes, another thing that happens very often, and I've released a video with Thomas and Rehabilitation recently, is exactly buying for renovating, but not being actually able to do the renovations you want to do legally. But the agents will usually tell you can do absolutely everything. And unfortunately, the standard scenario with selling agents here in Portugal is that they are not very aware of construction and renovation legislation. And they will usually tell you very positive things and maybe with no bad intention, but often they won't be right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else?
There was something else, but it's
well, I think what you said,
it will come back eventually.
Yeah, what you've said so far, I'm sure, is enough to have people reaching for.
Oh, of course, I almost forgot. So one of the other things that is very important when purchasing from abroad, it can be the currency exchange. Yes. And we have Sarah here that can explain a bit more about the process of purchasing with using a foreign currency and how you can make the best out of it. Both Expats Portugal and me have a partnership with Spartan FX. So go ahead, Sarah.
Nicely done. Sarah, are you there? Good evening to you.
Hello, hi everybody. Great to be here.
We'll have Thomas on later as well, because Thomas is mentioned and he's here as well. So we'll have Thomas talking too, which I know people look forward to. How are you, Sarah?
I'm very well, thank you. As I said, unfortunately, obviously, we've had some sad news about the Queen today, unfortunately, from the UK.
Yes.
So thoughts with everybody.
So go ahead. How does this work? Anna's got it as a one of the challenges, but in your hands, not as big a mountain as it could be, or as big a difficulty as it could be if
Absolutely. And I think that's what we're here for. There's sort of three elements, I think, to moving your money. One is the exchange rate on the day, looking at exchange rate movements, and then looking at the process itself. Basically, those are the three things. And really what I say to people is it's no different from anything else that you're doing, whether you need property and you go to an expert like Anna, or you're getting a visa, you go to an expert. This is exactly the same. We're experts in our field, and that's who you should turn to for help and guidance on these sort of things. First port of call probably would you think would be your bank. So things to bear in mind is the exchange rate they're offering you, always worthwhile comparing. We normally see about a 3 to 4% difference. We've seen some more extreme cases. So again, you can save money straight away just on the exchange rate. And the other thing to bear in mind with when you use your bank, you don't know exactly what the exchange rate is going to be when you come to make the exchange. So you're not going to know exactly how much, if you want a specific amount of euros to pay for your property, you don't know exactly how much you need to send in US dollars or sterling. When you go into branch or on the phone, they'll quote your rate, but it's actually when the transfer happens, which could be later that day or the next day if it's bank cut-off time. So what sometimes people can find is that, yeah, it's great if the rate moves in your favor, you'll get a little bit more extra. But if it goes against you, it could be short when it turns up in the lawyers or your account in Portugal. So, it's not great if you're trying to meet a deadline to make a payment for a property, but also more hassle because you'll have to make an extra exchange, and then that could be an extra transfer fee there from your bank, for example. Excellent. That's one thing to bear in mind.
Okay, and I don't know if you quickly want to say anything about the rates at the moment. I mean, these are very volatile times, aren't they?
Very volatile times. This week, certainly in the UK, we've got a new Prime Minister. There wasn't a lot of rate movement on the back of that. I think once she sort of gets her foot in the door and her plans unfold, maybe we'll see a little bit more rate movement on the back of that. Really, what's putting the pound under pressure is inflation, the risk of recession, the ongoing energy prices increasing, and the cost of living crisis. So a little bit doom and gloom there, but equally the euro as well, and they're suffering. I mean, we've seen it was helped a little bit today, the euro against US dollar, because the ECB, the European Central Bank, increased interest rates. It's the biggest increase that they've done in years. They increased it from 0 to 75 basis points, so it's quite an aggressive hike. It was priced in, which is why we didn't see it move any further. So for people sort of at home listening, it's a case of there's lots of things that we take into consideration. There's natural disasters, there's political elements, there's data releases, and sometimes they can significantly move the market. Other times, especially with data, we actually try and forecast what will come. So if it meets the expectation, then there's not a lot of movement. But if it goes against expectation, that's where we see a little bit more movement. The thing to bear in mind with the US dollar, the rates are really good at the moment. If you're buying now compared to January earlier this year, it was about 12% difference. So on a 250,000 euro property, that's about 34,000 US dollars difference. So the rates are really good at the moment. So it is worthwhile looking at how you're going to manage that going forward, especially if you've got deadlines that are in the future. And that's the other thing that we can help with. You can buy the currency as and when you need it. We can help monitor the rates for you, and just the best thing is really just to have that conversation so we know your timeframes and your budgets. The other thing that you can do is you can take advantage of the rate now. You can fix the cost of your euros in advance. You're probably thinking, well, how do I do that if I've not got all the money available or I've not got a euro bank account? That's not a problem. We do two things. One, you can either buy your euros in advance and we'll hold them on account free of charge. So we're finding a lot of clients are doing that at the moment. Even if they've not found a property, they've not moved to Portugal yet, they're buying their euros in advance because the rates are good. maybe do half of it if you don't want to do all of it, and maybe help spread that risk. The other thing you can do is we can fix the rate with just a 10% deposit. It's not a cost or a charge. You fix the rate, and then when you actually need it in whenever you complete, 6, 12 months, or as Anna says, it can be a month and a half. When you need the money, you pay us the remaining 90%, and it all goes out at that point, but you've fixed into that rate. Right. If the exchange rate moves in your favor, you are locked into that rate. But the benefit, or what we say to customers, is what's your budget? What are you working to? It would just help you manage that.
Excellent. Okay. And if people are concerned about the fluctuating rates, these are my words, not yours, Sarah, but I think you're like currency counselors. And people have relationships, don't they, with not that sort of relationship. People have a connection with their favorite person at Spartan, and I think it's like currency counseling. So it's good to start an account, a free account, and have a relationship with somebody then who can keep you in touch with what's going on and help you make the best decision for you. You will have to make the decision yourself ultimately, but you will get some good support and help from the folks at Spartan. So thank you. Will you stick around in case there are any questions people want to ask off air, as it were?
Yeah, absolutely. And the only tips I would share, even if you don't use this, is a couple of things. Is one, we always check the bank account details for the beneficiary. So if you're paying a lawyer, we'll ring the lawyer and just check those details, because if they send it over email, there might be human error there. Also, it might be worthwhile, if you are sending large amounts of money, is maybe do a test to them first for a smaller amount, because then at least if you're going to buy, say, a house for 250,000 euros, send a small amount, you make sure it's gone to the account, it's gone there fine, rather than send your 250,000 euros straight off. That might be something to think about.
Jerry offers a service if you want to test sending money across. Jerry's very happy to receive a little bit of a payment just to make sure everything's working. Is that right, Jerry? You or me?
No, I'd be delighted to do a call. Just send me a private message and I'll send you all the bank details. Okay.
Very good.
Any currency accepted, no problems.
All right, excellent stuff. Okay, Sarah, do stick around if you can, and we're going to talk to Thomas as well, because we've got a dream team here tonight, as it turns out. Back to Anna then. Buying a property in Portugal over the internet. However, you do offer your service to people who are already in the country. Please say you do, Anna. Otherwise, Connie and Hank.
Of course. But actually, thanks to Sarah's contribution, I remembered a few important things. Yep. So one of the things that is a fact here in Portugal is that our capital laundry laws and preventions. So one of the things that can flag this capital laundry inspection and stall a deal is to buy property with a foreign account and not have a financial presence in Portugal. When you exchange, and not exchange, but when you move money into a Portuguese bank account, that transaction is verified by the bank, so it is no longer flagged. So when you pay from a Portuguese bank account, you are at basically no risk or very low risk of having the transaction flagged for capital laundry. And when the transaction is flagged for capital laundry, it can be investigated and stall the deal, and no one will tell you why, because they can't. So that can happen too. And I saw someone asking if they need a NIF number to buy property in Portugal. Yes.
Okay, so the best thing to do is to get a Portuguese bank account opened and get the NIF number, and you can help with that as well?
Yes, and I know that Sarah at Spartan, they do open digital banks, and I don't know if they have the same legal framework as a normal Portuguese bank. I think that part Sarah would have to confirm.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there's a couple of things there. One, if you open a bank account, we can transfer into that. I know for a golden visa, it has to come from an account that's in Portugal, so we just transfer straight to there. We've transferred to a lot of lawyers straight from your account in, say, the US or the UK to us, and then on to a lawyer, and there hasn't been any problems. Aside from Expats Portugal, our customers are buying all over the world: Spain, France, Italy, Cyprus, and we transfer to lawyers, and there hasn't been any issues there. The other thing as well with our accounts, which maybe that's what is helpful, is that the accounts are actually in your name. So a lot of lawyers won't accept money from third parties sometimes because it's not actually in the customer's name, whereas with us it is. So I think that's probably another way that's actually a bit easier.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. There was just a very strange noise at my end. I'm not sure what it was, but that was why I was slightly distracted there. So thank you for that. It's not right to not talk to Thomas before the end of the recording here, given that we've got this holy trinity of buying property online here this evening. We will conclude with you, Anna, in just a moment, if we may. But Thomas, can you just, are you happy to speak up for a moment and tell us about your property that people can take advantage of with property inspections if they're buying from afar?
Yes, just briefly, and thanks, Anna, for mentioning us. You know, we've had lots of conversations with Anna and worked with some of the same clients very successfully. I think, as Anna said earlier on, some of this advice in terms of using a buyer's agent, and also I'd add using a lawyer, which I know has been touched on as well. I know Anna would agree with me, and she said it earlier on. Use somebody, even if you don't use Anna and Savvy Cat, even if you don't use us and Rehabilitation for inspections and surveys, get people to do these things to help you, because even if you know Portugal, even if you spent the time here, there are always things you won't know about the property that you're looking at buying. So please get the advice. From our side of things, what we offer are what we call surveys. That's more the British English approach. It's an inspection, typically from, I think, the US perspective, a detailed look at the construction of the property, the condition of it, what you might need to do if it's an older property to restore it, the kind of work that's involved, the right ways of going about it. Anna mentioned earlier that some sellers agents will tell you what you want to hear. Also, some builders who will come in and possibly quote for work will also tell you what they want to sell you. So do get the advice on the right way to improve on the property you're buying. And many of you will also have heard or hear stories about typical problems with Portuguese properties, including properties from the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s. Some of these are genuine issues. Some of them are things that exist as problems, but can be mitigated relatively easily with the right solutions. So between somebody like Anna at Savvy Cat, who's got your interests at heart, a good surveyor and inspector, and a good lawyer, you should have the 3 points that you really need to bring together to get all the information to secure the purchase that's right for you. And then, of course, if you need to use your money, somebody like Sarah at Spartan FX is on your side as well, and a great addition to that sort of picture.
Well said, Thomas. Thank you. And it's Rehabilitation. So you know, Jen, what is Thomas's company name? And that is a mashup name, isn't it, of the Rehabilitation area where you live. And in Portugal, when properties are renovated, they call it rehabilitation, don't they? So I think
exactly.
Pun, isn't it, based on those two words there? Rehabilitation. Find everybody. Find Savvy Cat, find Spartan and Rehabilitation in the Expats Portugal business directory. And feel free, folks, to put the direct links to your companies in the chat as well. Paul says, good evening, Paul. Buying a property by video is like jumping off a cliff hoping you can fly, which not many people can, as they discover. It very rarely shows you the negatives, and that's why, again, it's good to have somebody working for you, as Thomas has said, as Anna has said. There was a good question from Barack about the various wonderful pictures you can see of wonderful properties around Portugal, but how do we consolidate to find the best place from all the sites? There is no collective system yet, is there, Anna? Any sign of that, any chance of that anytime soon in Portugal, do you think?
You do have an MLS multiple listing system in Portugal, but it is only available for people who have real estate licenses. I do use it, and I do use it to make reports to clients. However, it also just agglomerates data for what is put into the market and not the data for the price that things are actually sold at. So to get the data for the prices that things are actually sold at, you need to go through the National Statistics Institute that does release reports usually every 6 months. And I actually usually put an overview of those reports on our blog when they come out. So usually every 6 months. And the data will never be specific. It will be statistics, general statistics. So you can't really get to know the price a specific house was sold at unless you are the buyer or the seller.
Very good. Okay, thank you very much for that. Yeah, just to reiterate for Jen on the how many locations can you include on the Wonder Pack? The Wonder Package, Wanderer Package sounds like a superhero package, and it probably is. But how many locations does that distill down to in the end? Was it 2?
Basically, you can virtually explore several locations. So you can talk to agents from all the regions if you want and get the location advisory and discuss the locations with them. But then you have to narrow down to 2 locations you want to explore more deeply.
Yeah. Okay. And the MLS is not for the public, is it?
No, it is for people with licenses only.
For the trade only.
Yeah.
And before we go to the specifics that you're asking about, Lynn, and also there was another wonderful question from Vadim. We'll come back to that because that's a more general thing that we'll discuss when we're unmuted and everyone's chatting. Anything I've missed? Anything we should have said, Anna, this evening about buying a property in Portugal over the internet?
Yes, I would like to walk people through the final purchases process. So like Thomas was saying, to get things, make sure things are on your side, you need a buyer agent, a lawyer, and an engineer that will do an inspection. We do all of this in our service. So all of that is included in our packages. And once we get to the stage where the clients want to make an offer on a house, we do all of that. So we will get the lawyer to verify all the paperwork. If there is any paperwork missing, we ask of that. The missing paperwork can be a pain because often it has to go through public services and takes a really long time. So that's a reason for delays on purchases, can be exactly missing paperwork. Another reason for delay on purchases can be the heirs and heir situations, because in order for a property to be sold when it's an inheritance, all of the people have to agree to the sale and sale price. If it's 10 people and one says no, no one can sell. So inheritance and situations can be a pain because of that. I've come across quite a few people that purchased property and then they come to me saying like, oh yeah, I purchased this, but this part wasn't on the documents or it wasn't legalized and so on. And that always makes me cringe inside. Don't do that. When we have situations like that with our clients, we make sure we will do a promise contract. A promise contract is a mutually binding agreement where a down payment is made. The standard amount is 10%. It can go up to 30%. I don't recommend doing more than 30%. We usually always keep it at 10. And we will get all the documentation. We will get the inspection done prior to that and use all of that we find to the negotiation. And once an agreement is made and the promise contract is made, you set a deadline for the final transaction to happen. So for the deed to happen. And when we do this deadline setting, we take into consideration what things we need to get. So if there is missing documentation, we will give it a longer deadline so the seller has time to get that documentation. But we never will make the deed before that documentation is on our side.
Very good. Very thorough. Thank you. 2 more questions then before we go to unmuting all the mics so everybody can ask their personal questions at the end of the recording. What is, you might want to tell me this later, but I was thinking when you said, you tell people about the schools and the local amenities, how far it is to the supermarket. What is the strangest request you've had? You don't have to name any names. I would rather you didn't. But what is the strangest request you've had from a client with their requirements for buying a house in Portugal?
We have a client asking how far the garbage bin was. That was a curious one.
It's an issue. For some people in the world, it's an issue. In Portugal, you're never more than, 50 meters from a dumpster, are you? So there's no problem with that. Okay, that's great. Anything else that we should know about people coming over to Portugal and what they require?
Someone made a question there about the loans, and that is very important. So if you are looking to get a loan in Portugal, first of all, always have at least 30% of the buying price. The banks will only loan up to 80%, and that is also depending on the property. In Portugal, you do not have pre-approvals. So the loan and the loan evaluation will be based on the evaluation the bank does of the specific property, and they will be more lenient the more over-evaluated the property is relative to the price you're buying it. So if the property is drastically over-evaluated, it's much more likely that they will give you the 80%. If the property is evaluated at around the same price or lower, they probably will be more closer to the 70%. On top of that, as it has been discussed, the loan rates and the Euribor rates have been rising drastically. And although they are better than the US and many other countries, from a Portuguese perspective, loans are not great right now.
Okay.
Another thing is that the installments have to be under 35% of the monthly income of the household. So if it's a couple buying a house together, it will be of both of the members. And the banks will only loan until the youngest person on the loan turns maximum of 75, and it's not all banks, it's usually between 65 and 70. So if you are all at a more advanced age, you will have a much shorter loan period.
Very useful information. Thank you for that. And of course, we talk to Jacqueline from time to time in the morning and in the evening on the webinar. Jacqueline, you can find in our business directory, as you can, Thomas at Rehabilitation, Spartan as well, and of course, Anna, who's been amazing tonight as usual. That'll be expatsportugal.com/business-directory to find all the associates of Expats Portugal in there and the great people to work with. Just one final question then, Anna. Where do you find fabulous wallpaper in Portugal?
Actually, this one came from the UK.
No!
But it was like 7 years ago or something. So
it's the same as Boris's wallpaper, as I suspected earlier on. Thank you very much, Anna. Great to talk to you tonight. Always good fun and extremely informative. Thank you. Great job. Thank you so much. Yes. A round of applause breaking out for you there. Superb. Okay, we'll go to open mic, as it were, now.